Welcome to Flipping the Tables. I'm Colleen Shaddix. Today we're talking with Natalie Wasik, who is Director of Corporate and Social Responsibility for the Sisters of St. Francis of Philadelphia. Welcome, Natalie.
Hello, good to be here.
Thanks. We wanted to talk with you about the sisters' long-standing commitment to practicing shareholder activism. Can you talk with me a little bit about what exactly that is?
Sure. So the Sisters of St. Francis have been involved in shareholder activism advocacy since the mid to late 70s. Um, Part of a handful of groups that do this work and growing now. And they do this work as a kind of a continuous and extension of their mission. So it's how can we continue to do this work? How can we make an impact with the investments that we have to continue the sisters' mission?
And so, what does an activist shareholder do? How do you try and move corporations toward better behavior?
Sure. So as a shareholder, you have the right to talk to the companies that you own. You're able to set up conversations or dialogues with companies to and ask questions about the businesses they're doing, what impacts they're making, whether that's about a specific environmental impact or social impact, human rights policy, governance issue, and things like that. As part owner of a company, you also have the ability currently to file shareholder resolutions through the SEC 14A8 process. That is a little bit different in terms of number of shares you have to own in order to do that process, but you can hold one share in a company and have a voice. That involves voting your proxies and talking to the company as part shareholder. So, in shareholder advocacy, it's using those shares as a voice, having a seat at the table, and bringing the voice of those maybe not heard at the table to the table. So we're trying to emphasize the voices that aren't necessarily part of these conversations at businesses. So we're talking to the companies on their human rights policies, on their greenhouse gas emissions, and things like that to not say that they're doing something wrong, but to shepherd them in a way to do better than than they are currently doing, or to applaud them for what they are doing well.
Now, I noticed you said currently. Is there any prospect that shareholders will not have the right to do these things in the
So
near
right
future?
So right now, investors are facing a lot of backlash and a lot of challenges within the shareholder resolution process. There could be potential changes to the shareholder resolution process. This past year, shareholders can no longer file exempt solicitations on the Edgar portfolio or Edgar website. And so there's a lot of different changes that are coming. So we're hoping that we will be able to file resolutions. I know right now we're still dialoguing with companies and we can still file those resolutions. So we don't know really what changes will come, but right now we're facing a few challenges on that front.
And can you explain what the Edgar website is?
So Edgar is a site, and I might not do a great job at explaining it. But after a resolution is filed, you're able to add more information and file what's called an exempt solicitation in hopes to garner more support and votes for that. And it's sent to the shareholders of that company. And so there's current thresholds of minimums of how much you have to hold in order to file an Edgar exempt solicitation currently.
Okay, great. Can you give us a few examples where the community's activism has actually changed the course of what a company was going to do?
So a lot of this work we do is in coalition. So I am not doing this work alone. The Sisters of St. Francis of Philadelphia are not doing this work alone. And so, even though we're doing this with hundreds of other investors that have millions, trillions of dollars in investments that are working on issues like this, I would say us individually, we're not, I can't say like the work I do is directly to an output of what a company does. But the Sisters of St. Francis, have had longstanding engagements with Wells Fargo, um, have worked with them on business standards since the t 2018, 2017, and continuously work with them and have seen improvements over what they've done. Locally, the Sisters of St. Francis had worked with essential utilities on the disclosure of chemicals and PFAS in the water. It was an ongoing relationship, and I know they were just recently bought by American Water, but we're hoping that that relationship will continue. They did disclose information, and we've had a relationship with the company also. This office also had worked with Hasbro on also publishing and disclosing chemicals and chemical information, and they joined the Chemical Footprint Project. And so there are some outcomes that we do see that we know we had some part in that work.
Mhm. Now, most investors are looking to maximize their return. Um, I know that the sisters depend on their endowment to support the community. How do you balance that real need to make money with being a force for good in the market?
So, like as you said, these investments are making money. So it's almost I might want to like flip the question or flip the question into a statement of, it's not that it's not making money, it's how can we use what is making money to make a difference.
Hmm.
So, as that extension of the mission of if we are invested in these companies, what can we do to help improve the impact of those companies to do better, to make a more positive impact than what they are currently making.
Do you choose companies because of a particular position that they may or may not be taking? Or is your portfolio a financial decision that you then apply this activism to?
It's a mixture of both. So I have a small portfolio that I can work out of, and work on specific issues, but making sure that those issues are aligned with the sisters' missions, as well as the larger portfolio that we do make sure is aligned with the mission as well. And if there are some things that don't, we have those conversations of do we engage those companies on these issues to help improve them? And that's a longer process, but
Hmm.
it's kind of the relationship between divestment or active engagement. And so there are issues, there are companies that we don't invest in, but there are companies that we do invest in specifically to engage them on those issues.
What's a red line for you? Tobacco or weapons or?
So we do have an exclusion list in our wider portfolio. It's tobacco, weapons, guns, and things like that. We do hold still a few of those companies for the purpose of engagement.
Mhm.
So it's not in our broader portfolio, but a small number of shares so that we are able to talk to the companies on those issues.
You talked about investor activism as something that is growing. Can you say more about that?
I I'm trying to like come into words of it, but I mean, looking back at the Sisters of St. Francis, they were doing this work in the early 80s. It was kind of a new and novel thing. The first shareholder resolution was filed in the late 70s. And with that, more and more Catholic investors and interfaith investors started filing shareholder resolutions, dialoguing with companies, building those relationships. And it is more, I think, intertwined with your everyday investor these days. People can have questions about where their investments are going and how they're making an impact. I think younger individuals now that are starting to invest their money are trying to understand where it's going and how it's growing. And so it has grown from kind of this, oh, it's just activism and these nuns are doing this work to bother the companies, which it never has been that case, right? It's always building the relationship and how can you make a positive impact.
Hmm.
And I think more and more people are starting to incorporate that into their investment strategies. So you have large investment firms that have a more environmental or socially focused impact portfolio. So I think it's definitely being intertwined now into like a variety of different financial institutions.
Are there resources that you would point people toward if they want to be ethical in how they invest their money?
I think there's so many I can share about. So we are members of the Investor Advocates for Social Justice, as well as the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility. And they have plenty of just information about what this work is, why it's important, and what we do. There's also other groups that we work with that are also members of ICCR and likewise kind of doing the similar work as you sow. They have different tools for individual investors as well as institutional investors on investing your values. And so they have different things you can look at of is my 401k gun free, deforestation free, fossil fuel free, and look at the ratings of your most common mutual funds that you might be invested in.
That's really helpful. Any other advice for people who want to use their money to do some good in the world?
Say learn where your money is if you can. If you hold individual stocks in companies, you can vote your proxies every year, see what investors are asking the company to do, see what companies are paying their top named executive officers. Um, your one vote or however many shares you own does make an impact in collective with everybody else who's also doing this work.
That's great. Thank you very much, Natalie.
Thank you.